In today's video, we're going to be talking about the box toppers for the new Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth set that will be coming with all boxes, regardless of variety, and there are some super noteworthy ones that are going to be worth some serious money. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel. If you do enjoy what you see here, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon if you want to stay notified for all the up-to-date information. And I thank you again for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of these. So there are 30 of these box toppers, and they are guaranteed in collector boosters, set boosters, and draft boosters. And you buy the box, you get one box topper pack similar to what they did with Infinity. I think we had something similar with Zendikar Rising. And there's been a few other sets with box toppers, but some have had just like a buy a box promo, like Streets of New Capenna. Basically, this one's random. There are 30 in total. And the cool part that's a slight added note is that in the collector booster boxes, you're actually going to be able to pull some of these in special foiling, surge foiling, I believe it's called, which is similar to what they use for Warhammer, as well as non-foil variants. So there are some opportunities to get them additionally to the box topper thing, which should be good for the overall game, because as people are cracking open this set looking for good box toppers, but also serialized soul rings and, you know, the one ring, the elusive, there should be a good supply of them on the market. So I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible because there are a lot of them to talk about and I don't want this video to go too long, but let's take a quick look at the box toppers for the set. All right, first up, we've got Ancient Tomb, and this one is always money regardless of what it's printed in. It has received a couple reprints, both in Ultimate Masters as a box topper in the past, and in Zendikar Rising, ironically, as a box topper, so they don't seem to want to give us an accessible version. The lowest version of this card, I will be using TCG Player market price for the purpose of this video's pricing, so be aware the numbers may be slightly off, but it was just easier to have a set number to look at for talking about the cards, is $70. That is the cheapest, so hopefully this will drive the price down a little bit. I just don't really see any reason to think that it will, because it's going to be pretty hard to get. Even though it will be in collector boosters, it's a mythic, so it's not going to appear all the time, and there are 30 of these, so they're all going to be tough to get. Next is YuGiOh. This one is actually on the lower end, around 75 cents for the lowest copy. Beautiful artwork, but it's not an expensive card, and it's definitely not the card you want to pull out of your box toppers. But of course, in order for the pricing to work and for the appeal to be there, they have to throw some kind of lackluster ones in there with the rest, and I'm sure they wanted them to feel thematically relevant to Lord of the Rings as well. But YuGiOh definitely not the best reprint here. We've got Boseiju Who Shelters All, which has seen reprints a couple of times, but it's from the original Kamigawa, I believe, are Champions of Kamigawa. I don't remember off the top of my head at the time I'm recording this, but it was also reprinted recently in a Secret Lair. The cheapest copy of this card available on the market is $18.50. That's not bad for a reprint. I mean, it may not be the best thing you're getting out of here, but it is a really cool card, and it has awesome artwork with that, you know, Saruman's Fortress. Definitely a solid mid-range card to include. Cabal Coffers feels like a card that is always good and could use a bunch of reprints because it has just always started to rise back up in price. Last time it was reprinted was in Modern Horizons 2, and it currently sits around $16.75 for the lowest copy. Not bad, but not, you know, it could definitely be cheaper and more budget, and that artwork is absolutely unreal, so it's definitely nice to see this one get a reprint. Castle Ardenvale up next is another one on the low end and very kind of disappointing here because this is about a 75-cent card at the cheapest. Not exactly super hard to get, but they definitely wanted to, you know, include a mix of things. It's an okay card, and it does look really cool, but definitely not the best one. Cavern of Souls is one that was revealed a while back when they did the initial sort of leaks a couple weeks ago, and I am really excited about this because this card was reprinted at Double Masters, but it really didn't bring the price down that much. It went from an average of like 70 to a low of 54. It's still a good price drop, but it's definitely not where you want it to be long term, so hopefully Cavern of Souls will be relatively easy to pull. I don't think there's going to be any change with the ratio, so it's really hard to say whether or not this card is going to, you know, see a real drop in price. But if you could get a copy for 40 at the end of the day, maybe that'd be great. And then, of course, we'll see it rise over time because it's just such a good card, especially in Commander. So, you know, I don't expect this card's price to go too lower, but if we can get it a little bit lower, that would be great. I'm trying to go through these as quick as I can so the video doesn't end up being super long. But next up, we've got Cloudstone Curio. This is another really good reprint that was currently around $49 for its cheapest copy before this reprint was announced. It's a really solid card that has a lot of use in certain combo variants. And, you know, again, about $50 for a copy. This is definitely going to drop. I think it's just scarcity because it only had one real print, and then a reprint has a masterpiece Obviously not the easiest thing to come by, so it's really not that accessible. I do think this one should end up dropping pretty significantly, but it's still a really good card, so it is just kind of hard to say where exactly it will end up. Deserted Temple has some awesome art as Weathertop, and I love the art on the original one as well. This card is around $30 right now at the cheapest, and it's just a decent card for certain combos. Pretty happy to see it in here as a reprint. It doesn't have that many prints, and it's definitely one of the ones you'd be, happier to pull. I think overall, because of scarcity, this should probably end up dropping to a bit lower of a price. I could see it settling maybe around $15, but then again, I could also see it going in the opposite direction. It's obviously hard to tell. Snaring Bridge is next, and this is a decent one, around $16 at the lowest. It was reprinted in Double Masters a couple of years back, so it's not incredibly hard to come by, but it's definitely not the easiest card to find. Another reprint certainly won't hurt, and I do think this should probably fall under $10. Just looking at the scarcity of, how many copies of it exist currently versus how many will be appearing on the market, and, the supply and demand of, some cards are going to be much more desired than others. People are going to have a large quantity of these. Things are going to be open. Gemstone Caverns is a massive one. This is about $60 at the lowest right now, with Prince in Time Spiral Remastered being the most recent, which was early 2021. It's an extremely good card, and not to mention, the artwork on the Glittering Caves of Algaron is just insanely cool. I do think this is going to be a bigger chase card out of the box toppers for sure. You're going to see a lot of people wanting to get their hands on this, and I don't know how much the price is really going to drop, because again, this card doesn't have a ton of prints, but I think we'll end up seeing it maybe dip a tiny bit before floating back up to where it was. This alternate art could easily end up surpassing maybe the regular Mythic copy from Time Spiral Remastered, dropping the price down a bit and at least putting more accessible copies on the market. The Great Henge. This one was announced a while back, but this is of course a huge reprint under the Party Tree. That artwork is just really cool, and this card is desperately needed a reprint. Throne of Eldraine wasn't that long ago, but it's definitely been long enough. And this card is about $53 at the cheapest, so it definitely is in need of a reprint and has no other accessible copies. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to see much of a drop at all. In fact, I think it's quite possible the promo could end up just going up a little bit. The most expensive version of this card is the extended art from Throne of Eldraine, the extended art foil. I don't know if it'll hit that number just because of scarcity, but again, it's a really good reprint, and hopefully getting more copies of it on the market will drive the price down, but maybe they'll double dip on it in Commander Masters or something and give us really a chance to get an accessible copy of it. Homeward Path is up next. I don't think this card's incredible, but it's certainly neat, and it's about $17.50 at the cheapest right now, so a decent, again, mid-range reprint for people that want to get their hands on a copy without spending almost $20. I don't know where it'll settle. It does feel like one of those cards that's just decent, but could probably drop just based on, again, the fact that there haven't been too many copies of it reprinted recently. Horizon Canopy is not the most expensive card at around $15.50, but it's actually a really, really good card. It is definitely a card that I wish they had made a full cycle for. I believe it's only this and one other one that has that sacrifice to draw card. I believe this was last printed in Modern Horizons 1, and it was also in Iconic Masters. So good card, nice reprint, kind of mid-range. This should probably do a little bit for the price, because around 15, I would think it might drop it to under 10, and at that point for a land, as good as this card is, that's definitely a solid option to have. This one's a little bit of a surprise. We've got Caracas. This card's actually banned in Commander, which is obviously the most popular format. It might be banned in other formats too, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. It still holds a pretty significant price at around $27.50, which tells me it's definitely legal in something. It's a really good card, and you can obviously see why it's banned in Commander, because of the absolute ridiculousness of being able to just bounce your opponent's commander every turn, or bounce your commander, reuse it. I mean, there's a billion ways to make this card abusable, so it makes complete sense that it's banned. I am surprised they're reprinting it in here simply because of that fact, but technically it's LTC, that's Lord of the Rings Commander. It's part of the Commander subset. It doesn't really mean much. I don't think it means we're going to get it back or anything, but it's certainly a nice reprint. We've got Core Haven at $15.50, the cheapest, decent card. Hopefully just getting another print will actually make its price go down, because it's only been printed one other time. We've got Minamo, School at Water's Edge. This is a $23 card, most recently printed in the Mystery Booster, and only once prior to that. Super, super cool artwork on this, and I do think this is just a good card that should hopefully fall to a bit more of a budget range, like $15 or so. Mouth of Ronam is actually 75 cents, so it's a really disappointing card. Again, there are going to be some things you might hit out of box toppers that you're just going to be like, what the fuck? That sucked. this is definitely one of them. Not a terrible card or anything, but definitely not what you're looking for. Oboro, Palace in the Clouds is probably the best reprint in here other than Ancient Tomb. This card has no reprints up to this point and is around $61 at the cheapest. It's a really, really good card to see get a reprint, and it's just a good card in general, so hopefully this one will be relatively accessible, but we'll see whether or not its price drops significantly. I think scarcity and only having one print has definitely led to it being more pricey, but it's also a good card, and so we don't really know where it's going to end up. Pillar of the Peruns was just reprinted in Double Masters 2022, and it's about $1 at the cheapest, so I have to say a little disappointed by this one. Again, not the worst card from an art perspective, and it has its uses, but it's not really going to be what you're wanting to hit out of here. Reflecting Pool is a decent card, around $6 at the cheapest, was reprinted in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's a good card, and it's definitely one that doesn't hurt to have an extra copy, but I question needing to reprint it this soon, especially with how cheap it is, when you could have put something like Mana Confluence in there instead. Rings of Brighthearth is around $4 at the cheapest and is a decent card that certainly has some use, especially in Commander, but it's not really in need of a reprint and wasn't all that expensive beforehand, so I'm not super fond of this choice either. I'm not trying to be super critical. I think there are some exceptionally good reprints here, but there are also some that are just not that great. Next up is Shadow Spear. This card from Theros Beyond Death is an extremely good card. Not only is it insanely good in Pioneer, but it's really good in Commander and other formats too. And this one is definitely one that benefits from a reprint being around $20 at the cheapest for just its standard regular art version. It is a really cool looking reprint and just another card that I think would continue to go up over time if it didn't get a reprint. So better now than later. Obviously, it's not the most expensive, but it's a really, really good card that I think just over time would be going up more if it wasn't more accessible. So I am very much in favor of this one. Shinka the Blood-Soaked Keep, again, a card that was reprinted in the Mystery Booster most recently. Just another really good card and another legendary land, similar to some of the others, but of course it's not as expensive because it's not quite as good as some of the others and not as restrictive as, like, Oboro, so in terms of accessibility, so this one is not bad. Right now, around $13 at the cheapest, so relatively affordable, but again, another cool reprint and just a good card for any red deck, especially in Commander. I don't know about its modern status, but I digress. Sword of Hearth and Home, a pretty good reprint here. Sword cards are always welcome reprints. Right now, around $11.50 at the cheapest. This was in Modern Horizons 2, so it's not exactly the hardest to get, but, that set is not the easiest to come by nowadays, at least not super cheap, and this is a really cool artwork here, and I feel like I've said that a lot, but it's a good card, and making the swords more accessible to budget players is never going to be a bad thing. Speaking of which, Sword of the Animist as well getting a solid reprint here, and this one is around $11.50 at the cheapest too, so not a huge value reprint, but a nice card. I would definitely say this is a card you could probably pick up down the road once you've had a chance to, like, the set's out a little bit, things have started to drop and settle. Just overall really good. The Ozolith up next. This card had started to spike a ton, and it's definitely a welcome reprint. $25 for the cheapest copy prior to this reprint, and I think it should probably take a solid dip here, but we'll have to wait and see. Thorn of Amethyst is $1 at the cheapest and was just reprinted in Brothers War as a retro artifact, so I don't know why they're doubling down on it here. Not the one you want to pull for sure, but again, I guess it looks neat for that purpose, so if you're interested in the card, you should be able to get it without having to spend a lot of money. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth is definitely my favorite card they're reprinting here, simply because I've been waiting for this card's price to come down for a while. It's around $38 at the cheapest, and it's just a really good card along the lines of Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. Obviously, this was here first, but it's just extremely good. I mean, there's really not much you can say about it beyond that. It's a very welcome reprint, and it looks sweet, and it's going to be a good value for a lot of players. Again, I don't think it's going to be some kind of massive price drop, but some things are going to have to give, and maybe we could pleasantly see this card around $20. Wasteland is another one that's just a good card that a lot of people like to go after. It's been reprinted a few times, and the price always goes back up. $22.50 at the cheapest right now, and just a welcome reprint, and I think people are going to be happy about this one. It probably will be a solid value, but it's not on your higher end. And finally, Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. Now, while I will say this card is around $8.50 at the cheapest, it's not super expensive and not that old. The artwork on this for the Fanghorn Forest is so unbelievably cool and is by far my favorite of the alternate arts that they've made for these 30 box toppers. So I'm really excited to get my hands on a copy because this is basically a staple for anything that's playing green, especially in Commander, but I'm sure it's he's playing as well. So now we're going to turn it over to you guys. What do you think of the box toppers? Do you think they're good? Do you think they're bad? Are you excited to get your hands on some from collector boosters? Let me know what you guys think of it in the comments down below, and I will catch you in the next one.